about why you might consider leaving Warhammer for Flames of War. Now, I play Warhammer 40k and lots of different Games Workshop games, and I like the IP, and I like the lore, and I like the models. But there's been a lot of grumbling lately online, particularly with the release of Warhammer TV, that a lot of internet folks and folks on forums and whatnot haven't been too happy and have been looking elsewhere. So I know that there's been recommendations for checking out all different kinds of games. So I thought it might be fun to just talk about Warhammer 40k in regards to Flames of War, and why Flames of War might be a good thing for you to check out if you haven't done it yet. So I play both on the channel. If you have watched the channel for any length of time, you'll know we've done Warhammer 40k battle reports, Age of Sigmar, lots of Flames of War. We're not tied to any one system, but we do tend to play Flames of War quite a bit because that's one of the ones we enjoy the most. So with that said, one of the things to consider, and there'll be several things we talk about, is the cost. Now you might be asking, why am I comparing like Warhammer 40k, which is a 28mm science fiction skirmish game, to Flames of War, which is a 15mm World War II game? Well, besides the setting, there are a lot of similarities. You're still talking about a broadly tactical game, a similar number of models, scenarios. For example, Warhammer 40k has lots of different races. You've got Space Marines, Imperial Guard, Eldar, Orcs, Tau, Tyranids, all the chaos. Similarly, Flames of War has, a lot of nations that you can play in different time periods. You have currently mid-war and late war. I'm sure they're going to loop back around to early war and Pacific War and Vietnam. You have Team Yankee for World War III hypothetical. But there's a lot of nations. There's Americans, British, Germans, Soviets, Finland, Hungary. There's so many ways you can play that. French, Free Forces, Polish. So there's a lot of options. So that's why I consider those two games similar than, say, more of a recreational game, which isn't, that doesn't have a lot of support behind it or a lot of supplements or anything like that. It is what it is. For example, the recent Pacific Rim game that I've had on the channel, there's not a ton of that. It's going to have probably 3 releases, 3 waves, and that's it. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Flames of War and 40k, I think, are in a similar place as far as a gaming lifestyle type game. All right, so and I don't want to hate on 40k, so don't think that's what I'm doing here. But this video, again, if you are a 40k player who is looking to try something else, give Flames of War a look. So let's talk about comparable armies. So I went online at the time of filming this week to look at prices for a typical 40k army and a Flames of War army. So for 40k, I just looked at the Ultramarines, building an Ultramarine army from scratch, like coming into the hobby new. Because I play Ultramarines, I kind of know how they are. That's my favorite army. I have several 40k armies. So I thought I would try that and see. So I went online, and these are all prices from the GW website. So you might be able to find them cheaper online at different places. But if you're wanting to build a Ultramarine army, you're going to start with needing a codex. So you're going to need the Space Marine Codex, which runs you $50. You're going to need Codex Supplement, which for the Ultramarines, which is an extra $30. You'll also probably want the Space Marine Data Cards, that runs you $25. So you've got quite an investment already there in just rule books you need to play. So that's like $105 just by itself. As far as getting miniatures, taking advantage of their box sets is a good way to go. It might not build you a perfect super competitive army, but it's a cool way to get forces on a table, and and start playing with your friends. So the first thing we're looking at is the Warhammer 40k Command Edition. So that's like the de facto starter box for this 9th edition of 40k that we're in right now. Starter box. That runs $165 and does net you, I think it's a softcover rulebook in there. So that gets you, I think it's like a captain, 5 assault intercessors, and 3 of the Primaris bikers, I forget what they're called, for $165. Then you get pick up a combat patrol for Space Marines, which is a $140 box, and that one has like a lieutenant, 10 infiltrators or incursors, I can't remember which one, but basically a type of line infantry. And it has an impulsor, which is a gravity, a grav APC. We have like character models. Like one of the things I like in my Ultramarine army is Chief Librarian Tigurius. He runs $40 for just one figure. Maybe you want some more line troops because you need line troops to capture objectives. So a box of 10 Primaris intercessors runs you $60. And then maybe you want a centerpiece model. So the centerpiece model, let's say a Primaris Repulsor Executioner, will run you $100. All told, that will run you approximately $610 US for all of that. And putting all of that into an army list, you'll get roughly about a 1,500 point army. So to put that in perspective, many tournaments are at 2,000 points. On the channel, we've played at 1,500 quite often because it's kind of a fun, doesn't take quite as long. You have to make choices in your list building. But 2,000 is a pretty common number as well. So $610 though to get started if you want to build an Ultramarine army. Building other armies is similar. Again, I'm just using this as an example. Now let's jump over to Flames of War. Let's say we're going to build, we want to build an American Sherman Company. American Sherman Company is one of my favorite lists to run in Flames of War. I love the Sherman. I love the way that army plays. So let's say we want to build that. So you're going to start with the books. You're going to need a D-Day American book. We'll use that one. That runs $25 currently. And then you're going to want to use the D-Day American cards. So it's like the support cards. That runs $15. If you go, so then you're spending, what is that? That's like $40 in rule books compared to the $105 you're spending for Games Workshop. All right, then you need to pick up some models. So Hit the Beach is what they call their current starter set, and it has a American and a German army in it. And it's a really good box set. It only costs $60 US, and the American side, which is what we're talking about in this example, has like, I think it's like 8 Shermans and a US para platoon. So that in and of itself is actually a playable force. You can play a Sherman company with an HQ and 2 platoons of 3 tanks and support it with a airborne platoon. And again, with the Germans, you could paint them and use them to introduce people to the game, or you could sell them on eBay and recoup some of your loss for that $60 box. That box also comes with the complete rulebook. It's a little mini rulebook, but it's a complete rulebook, so you've got everything you need to play. Then, besides that, though, you're not quite there at a full army, so I'd recommend the American Starter Box, which is $110 currently, but it's a fantastic box. It's got, I believe, 5 Shermans in it, and it's got 4 M10 tank destroyers, 3 Stuarts, 3 Priest self-propelled artillery, and a armored rifle platoon, which is half-tracks and infantry. Armored rifle platoon, one of my favorite units in the game as well. That's all you need to really build a pretty good American tank force, and that will come to, if you put everything in those 2 boxes together in a list builder, you're going to get about 115 points, plus you can take upgrades if you want, and would run you about $210 total to purchase that. So getting into Flames of War, at least in these examples, it's almost a third as expensive for Flames of War as it is Warhammer. So that's something to consider. Now, Flames of War is definitely you're benefiting if you can leverage the starter box, like you want to build Americans or you want to start with Germans. But if you want to build something else, like a British force or something, probably cost a little bit more because you can't. Well, I guess you might be able to use the Shermans, but you'd have to start with whatever nation's starter box that is, plus some platoon boxes, which could run you a little bit more. But still, Flames of War is way ahead on the game. Next up, I wanted to talk about rules. So I've played 40K for a long time, since I played Rogue Trader when it came out. I left the hobby, I think, after 2nd edition, came back in maybe 5th edition. So, for example, I've bought a lot of Space Marine codexes in my day. And I think the rules are, they're decent, at least the core of the rules are. The rules in and of itself, how things interact, how shooting works, how saves work, how movement works, how assault works, it's pretty good stuff. But there's been a lot of bloat and codex creep to the rules. For example, I'll use Age of Sigmar because this is like during this week and last week. I think they've had 2 or 3 different FAQs that have not only changed what's in the codex, but then changed what was in the previous FAQ and then clarified what was in the previous 2 FAQs. It was pretty confusing, to say the least, and that can lead to issues if you're playing at a game store or something and you don't know. Someone says, no, you can't do that, that's an FAQ, and someone says, well, in the second FAQ you can do it, but it's this way now, and you just have your rule book with no FAQ. That can get pretty confusing. Power creep is also a well-known fact in 40K. The newer codexes tend to be, with some exception, they tend to be much more powerful than preceding codexes. So there is that to consider. On the Flames of War side, we're on version 4 as opposed to version 9 of 40K. Version 3 I thought was a fantastic rule set, version 3 of Flames of War. It had a lot more detail to it, but still played really well. And there are some things I still like in version 3 that are better than version 4, but version 4, as it's been out now for several years, has really grown on me. I really like it. It's streamlined the game and made the game, I think, simpler and faster to play. So, for example, in the version 3, if you went through a woods with your tank and you bogged, you failed your cross-check in version 4, you would stay bogged down until you managed to roll to get back in your tank and try to move again. And that could result in your tank just staying bogged, go into a wood, get bogged, and just stay bogged the entire game. So there was rules for like armored towing vehicles to help improve that roll to unstuck your vehicle so you could try to cross again. Version 4 got rid of all that. You just, if you fail your cross check, you stop. Next turn, you can try again. You're not continuously bogged down. And it's a simplification or streamlining like that that makes version 4 a lot of fun. Version 4 is also the core of the rules for Team Yankee World War III, which is kind of a 1980s hypothetical. Almost everything I'm saying about Flames of War could be Team Yankee, applied to Team Yankee as well. So I really like the rules. I'm going to admit that they did fumble. I think Battlefront fumbled on the initial release of version 4 and soured some of their players, but I think that happens on any version change. Anytime you're changing versions. Because Lord knows 40K suffered a lot from that as well whenever they switch versions. You're going to have those guys that swear 2nd edition of 40K is the end-all be-all, and that's what they still play. More power to them. There's nothing wrong with playing older versions of the rules. But I find version 4 Flames of War pretty good. Flames of War, you have to buy codex for every army. They call them intelligence briefings. Each one runs about $25 as opposed to the $50 that 40K charges you, and 40K tends to charge those much more often. I have a stack of Space Marine codexes in the garage that are just useless $50 books that do nothing. So they tend to reprint a lot of the same lore, but it's what it is. So there you go. So that's rules comparison. Now model wise, models are different. I mean, Games Workshop makes beautiful models. The models are fantastic. They're well put together, and they've really improved over the years. But some of those ranges are many years old, like the Eldar or the Tau, the Tyranids. Their line troops haven't had a refresh for I don't know how many versions. But the new stuff is just gorgeous. But it's pricey. Tigurius, $40. Battlefront has really improved. They used to be almost strictly resin and metal, and they started with plastics, and they've had an uphill struggle with producing good plastics, but they finally got there a few years ago, and their plastic tank kits are great in my opinion. I would swap out all my metal and resin if I could afford it over to the plastic versions for the detail and just the way that they look. But they make really nice models of historical things, and that's one of the differences too. With 40K, Games Workshop can copyright a Space Marine. Battlefront can't copyright a 15mm Sherman tank. Any company could produce them, and there are several good companies out there that produce competitors, like Plastic Soldier Company and Zvezda have pretty good offerings as well. I like Battlefront models, but the other companies are just as good, or 3D printing. So you do have those options, and there's nothing Battlefront can do about it, because again, you can't copyright a Tiger tank. It's what it it's a traditional vehicle. So there is that difference, and that's something to consider when you are hopping over to a different game system. Again, I don't want to sound negative on 40K, but I do know that there are a lot of players out there that are looking for alternatives. And I know other YouTubers have espoused other game systems. For example, I've seen some BattleTech ones. Maybe check out BattleTech as an alternative, or Bolt Action. And those are great. I haven't played Bolt Action yet. I'm not against it. I like Warlord games. But things like BattleTech, I've played BattleTech, and that's pretty fun. There are other things you can play, but I want to make sure that Flames of War is out there, and 40K players know about it, and give it a look-see, see if it's something for them. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Are you disgruntled with 40K? Do you think it's overblown? What do you think about the current rule set? What do you think about it versus Flames of War? I'd like to hear it down in the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. Please do consider giving us a like and subscribe. Click that bell to receive notification when we release new content. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram at All Miniatures Great and Small. Thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.